Good morning. Greetings from BMS College of Engineering, Bangalore. In today's module, we shall see the discrete time LTI system. The discrete time LTI system, different methods of representing the LTI system. The LTI stands for linear time invariant system. So we shall see what are the different methods of representing the LTI system, and can we move from one method of representation to the other. So essentially, a discrete time system accepts an input signal xn. Say I have an LTI system, and the output, we get another discrete time sequence yn. So this is a sequence. We have seen how we could convert from an analog domain to a discrete time domain. So essentially, after performing sampling, we have a sequence of numbers. We have a sequence xn, and it passes through the system, and we get another output yn. So why do we give this signal to the system? Because the nature, the properties of yn is in some way more preferable than the input xn. That's the reason we give our discrete time sequence to a system, a digital system, and we get another sequence which is more favorable. And let us see this LTI system. What are the different methods of representing it? So to represent the LTI system, one would be the difference equation. The difference equation. The other can be the impulse response h of n. Impulse response h of n of the system. The Z transform, or the pole zero plot of the system. The frequency response h of omega of the system. The block diagram representation. The block diagram representation of the system. These are some of the different methods in which we can represent the LTI system. Now, what do we mean by definition or understanding of an LTI system? So it states that if I have a signal, input signal x of n, and if I have the output signal yn, what it mentions, delay the input, say x of n by n naught, so be corresponding minus n naught. This is the time invariant property, and so this is the time invariant property of the system. Similarly, what is the linearity property? The linearity property states that if I give a times xn to the system, because if I multiply the input by some constant, the output will be same, multiplied by the same scaling factor. So multiplication by a constant in the input will result in a similar scaling in the output. Or if I give a sum of two signals, say a times x of n plus b times w of n, then I am going to get the output as a times y of n plus b times say z of n, where where an input Wn resulted in an output Zn. So these constitute the linearity property. So, or the superposition theorem. It obeys linearity as well as the superposition theorem. So sum of two inputs will result in sum of corresponding two outputs. So once we have these properties being satisfied, the system is said to be an LTI system. And these are the type of systems we are going to consider in this module. So going to the first method of representing an LTI system is the difference equation. Wherein where I have an input xn, the input sequence xn, I have the system, the LTI system, and my output is say yn. Now, what does the in general, my output can be represented by a difference equation given by say a0 x of n plus a1 x of n minus 1 plus a2 x of n minus 2 and so on, say up to am x of n minus m minus say b1 yn minus 1 minus b2 yn minus 2 minus bn yn minus n. Or I can write the above as sigma I equal to 0 to m ai x of n minus I minus n bj y of n minus j. This is constant coefficient difference equation, because these values, because the ai and bj are constants, they are constants, they are not a function of time, or not a function of n, and that is why we say this is a constant coefficient difference equation. They appear as sorry, weighted sum. They do not appear as a product. If it is a product, the system becomes a nonlinear system. So this is one method of representing the LTI system, the constant coefficient difference equation. Now let's go to another representation, and that is the impulse response h of n. The impulse response h of n. Now what is impulse response h of n? I have my system for which if I give an input xn, my output is going to be yn. In general, this is how I represent my LTI system. Now to the same system, if I give my input as the unit impulse function, the output that I get is known as the impulse response. So what is my input? Input is the delta function. So it is 0 for all n and it is 1 for n equal to 0. So 1, 2, 3, minus 1, minus 2. So this is my input xn or delta n. When I give my input as a unit impulse, whatever output I get from the system is known as the impulse response h of n. So the impulse response also completely represents the system, and we can arrive at system properties by observing the impulse response. So now let us consider the let us take the difference equation. Say yn equal to a0 xn plus say a1 xn minus 1 plus a2 xn minus 3 minus 3 plus say a4 xn minus, sorry, okay, this is a2 xn minus 2 a3 xn minus 3. Plus we'll take this as an example. As an example, how do I get the impulse response of this system? So what is my impulse response? My input xn is given by 1 and all zeros, and it is 1 for n equal to 0. So I consider my difference equation, say equation 1, and I put in different values of n. Let us say I put n equal to 0. So then I will get my y of 0. And if I put n equal to 0 in the difference equation, I get plus a1 x of minus 1 plus a2 x of minus 2 plus a3 x of minus 3. And because in this particular example, we are arriving at the impulse response, x of 0 is 1 because this is my input, x of 0 is 1 and all other values are 0. So all these values tend to 0. And so what happens is this tends to 0, this tends to 0 and this tends to 0 and this tends to a 1. And hence we have the value as we have a0 into 1. So y0 is a0. Similarly, in the same difference equation, I will put n equal to 1 and I will get the value at yn equal to 1. And let us see what we get. It now becomes a0, put n equal to 1, x of 1, a1, put n equal to 1, this becomes x of 0, a2, n equal to 1, this becomes 1 minus 2, that is minus 1, and so on. So what we get is a0 x of 1 plus a2 x of minus 1 plus a3 x of minus 2. And once again, it is x of xn. My input is a delta function. In this particular example, we are considering my input as delta unit impulse, and hence my x of 0 is a 1 and all other terms are zeros. This is a 0, this tends to 0, this is 0 because my input is an impulse function. And then I get my y1 as a1 into 1, so a1. Similarly, if I proceed and I substitute n equal to 2, I will get y2 equal to a2, and when I put n equal to 3, I will get y3 equal to a3, and if I put n equal to 4 or any number higher than that, my y4 will be 0, and for any value n greater is going to be 0. So we have the final result, my impulse response h of n, putting all the values. Y0 was a0, y1 was a1, a2, a3, and this is my origin. So what we have now is I have my output, or that is the response of the system to an impulse, and I do not know the values. It depends on the actual values of the constants, n equal to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. In this particular example, we have taken only constants a1, a2, a3 being present. A2. Say we do not know the values. I'm just drawing A1, A2, A3, A0. I mean this A0. This is going to be of magnitude A1, and this will be of magnitude A2, and this will be of magnitude A3. I mean we do not know. It depends on the actual constants being high or low. So finally we have the impulse response in this particular case. And what is this case? So I have, what is my observation in this example? In this example, the impulse response h of n is of finite duration. Finite duration. So it exists for a finite value of n, or in this particular case, it has the impulse response is of length 4. Because the duration is finite, we call the system as a finite duration impulse response, or an FIR system. This is an example of an FIR system. Why is it FIR? Because the impulse response, this is a finite duration impulse response system. So this is a system that has an impulse response of finite duration, and it is hence it is known as the FIR system. Let's take one more example. Let's take another example of computing the impulse response from the difference equation. And once again, we know that input is x of n. I have a system and I have the output yn. And if my input xn is equal to the unit impulse function, the output which I get is known as the impulse response hn. And we just saw that one method of representing the system is by using the difference equation. So let me have this as say a0 xn minus say b1 yn minus 1. I'm just taking for example a short with few coefficients, but in a real system we may have a finite number of coefficients a0 and an. It depends on the order of the system. Now let us try what is this. In this case, my output is dependent on the input xn and also the passed output yn. So let us once again try to compute the impulse response. What is xn? My input is a unit impulse function, and my aim is to compute the impulse response. So what is an impulse? Unit impulse is 0 everywhere, and it's a 1 at n equal to 0. So this is my n equal to 0. At n equal to 0, it takes the value 1, and for all other values of n, it is 0. So now let us once again try to put n equal to 0, and let us compute the output from this difference equation. Now this is my difference equation. From this difference equation, I need to compute the output. And whatever output I get will then be known as the impulse response. So let me put n equal to 0 here. And what I get is y0 equal to a0 x of 0 minus b1 y of minus 1. And assuming the system is relaxed or it does not have any previous output, we will consider the past output as 0, and my input x of 0 is 1 because it's a unit impulse function, and hence my output is a0 into 1 and minus b1 into 0. So my output is a0. Let us now put n equal to 1 in the above equation, and then we get y1 equal to a0 x of 1 minus b1 into y of, put n equal to 1 in this equation, so I get y0. Then what do I get? I now get my y1 as a0, sorry, x1. x1 tends to 0. x1 is 0 because this value x1 is 0. And hence my output in this case, for n equal to 1, this is 0, So minus B1 into Y0. And what is Y0? A0. So this is minus A0 B1. Next, let me put n equal to 2 in the above equation. In the difference equation, I then get, I need to put n equal to 2 in this equation, and then I get A0 x of 2. I get A0 x of 2 minus B1 y of 2 minus 1, that is y1. And how much is that? X of 2. X of 2 tends to 0. X of 2 tends to 0 because my input is a unit impulse function. So this is 0. So then I have minus B1 into y1. And what is y1? Y1 is minus B1 A0. And so that gives me plus A0 B1 square. Similarly, if I put n equal to 3, I am going to get y3 as minus b1 into y2. And what is y2? It is going to be a0 b1 square. That is going to be minus a0 b1 cube. And if I go n equal to 4, I'll get n equal to 4 as minus b1 into y3, which is minus a0 b1 cube, and that becomes plus a0 b1 to the power of 4. And so we can proceed this way, and we can tell that yn will be minus 1 to the power of n into a0 into b1 to the power of n. So if I try to sketch, so if I write my impulse response in this example, I have y0. What was y0? Y0 was a0. Then y1. Y1 is minus a0 b1. Next, minus a0 b1 square. So if I put the whole sequence, I have my result as a0, then minus a0 b1. Next, I have plus a0 b1 square. Next, I have minus a0 b1 cube, and so on. And where does this stop? It doesn't stop. It goes to infinite. It goes to infinity. So let's try to sketch the result. I have n, and at n equal to 0, I have the value as a0. A0 could be anything positive, negative. It could take any value depending on the given difference equation. And assuming b1 is positive, I have my h of 1 as minus a0 b1. Say minus a0 b1. And next, for n equal to 2, I have a0 b1 square. Next, I am assuming b1 is positive and less than 1. Assuming b1 is positive, less than 1. Then I get this. Then 3, I get a1 b1 cube, and so on. So this is one case. On the other hand, if I assume my b1 is greater than 1, I am going to have the values, my impulse response. If my b1 is greater than 1, then I have the same result, a0 h of n, and I have the value for, say, minus a0 b1. Then I have a0 b1 square. Say this is going to be larger, and say then 1, 2, 3, then a0 b1 cube. Say it's going to be even larger, and say for n equal to 4, it's going to be even more larger, and for n equal to 5, say b1 a0 b1 to the power of 5, it's going to be larger and larger. So what we have is, we have an observation in this example. In this example, the duration of the impulse response is infinite. Of course, it's 0 for n less than 0. It is infinite. So, and hence, because the duration is infinite, these type of systems are known as infinite impulse response system. Infinite impulse response system. So the duration of the impulse response is finite. That is the length. If I take the length of h of n, this is equal to infinity, and hence we call it as IIR system. Now you see, depending on the constants A0 and especially the constant B1, the system, the summation of the impulse response could either be finite or infinite, and hence once again we can comment on the stability of the system. So if the impulse response is absolute summable, then we have a stable system. On the other hand, if my impulse response is not finite, then we have an unstable system. So from the impulse response, by looking at the impulse response, we can comment on the stability. We can, by observing the impulse response, we can comment on the stability of the system, and we can of course look at the length of the impulse response and say if it is an FIR system or an IIR system. So and we can also comment on the causality of the system. Of course, if my h of n is not equal to 0 for n less than 0, then the system is non-causal. So by looking at the impulse response, it is possible to comment on all system properties. So that is why the impulse response becomes another important method of representing the LTI system. So before we proceed to the next method, so in general, if my output y0, yn has these terms, my difference equation, n equal to 0 to m, sorry, not n, ai, my difference equation, ai, I mean yn equal to I equal to 0 to m, ai, x of n minus I. If my difference equation is in this manner, m being finite, and it is a function of my output at any instant is a function of the present and past input. It's a function of present and past input. Then my system is going to give me a finite impulse response system. On the other hand, if I have my difference equation as sigma I equal to 0 to m ai x of n minus I minus sigma j equal to 1 to n bj y of n minus j, the moment I have my output being a function of, if my output is a function of input, present and past, and also past output. So past output, these terms, then my system is going to become an IIR system, infinite duration impulse, because there's a feedback. And as we have seen in the recent example, by simply substituting different values of n, because the output is or past outputs are also contributing to the present output, the impulse response becomes of infinite duration. And once my system impulse response is of infinite duration, I need to classify the system as stable or unstable depending on whether the impulse response is absolute summable or not. So this is about the impulse response, one method of representing the LTI system. We shall now go to another method of representing the LTI system, and that is the the Z transform. Let us consider the Z transform method of representing the LTI system. Now, before we proceed, let us see what's the Z transform. If we are given a discrete time sequence x of n, if we have a sequence xn, we can compute the Z transform x of z, where z is a complex variable, and I can move from the time domain. This is the time domain. From the time domain, I move to another domain, the z domain. And how do I compute the Z transform of a given sequence? It is given by this summation, n equal to minus infinity to infinity, x of n, z to the power of minus n. So this way we can compute the Z transform. Of course, the inverse Z transform also can be computed by using a suitable integral or by other methods. We shall see that later. For now, since we are focusing on representing the LTI system using the Z transform, this is what we shall consider. So my Z transform of any sequence xn is given by this equation summation minus infinity to infinity x of n z power minus n. I can let me take one time shift property of the Z transform, because that is what I would require immediately. So if let us try to compute the Z transform of x of n minus n naught. So let's to compute the Z transform of the sequence x of n minus n naught. I just need to put in the above summation n equal to minus infinity to infinity x of n minus n naught z to the power of minus n. And what we get, let me use a new variable, say m equal to n minus n naught. If I do that, then my summation goes from when n is minus infinity, m also becomes minus infinity. So I have m equal to minus infinity. When n is plus infinity, again m goes plus infinity. So n minus n naught, I'm putting a new variable x of m, z to the power of minus, what is n? N is m plus n naught. M plus n naught. And so I have this as m equal to minus infinity to infinity x of m z to the power of minus m and z to the power of minus n naught. Z power minus n naught is not a function of m, it's a constant. N naught is a constant, and hence I can get it out of the summation. And what I have is z power minus n naught, this term, and this term we can identify it as the Z transform of xn. So instead of my summation going from n minus infinity to infinity, I just have n being replaced by m. So this whole summation can be identified as x of z, and hence we have x of z into z to the power of minus n naught. Or if I have x of n minus n naught, the Z transform is given by, say, z to the power of n naught into x of z. So time shift property of Z transform results in a multiplication by z power minus n naught and the original Z transform remaining intact. So now using these two properties, that is the definition of Z transform and the time shift property, we can arrive at the transfer function, at the another method of representing the LTI system, and which is using the Z transform or the system transfer function h of z. By using the Z transform, and then we try to get the system transfer function h of z, the third method of representing the LTI system. So once again, we shall consider the difference equation. So we have our difference equation as yn equal to a0. Let's just for clarity, let's consider the difference equation of the system. So difference equation is given by y of n equal to a0 x of n plus a1 x of n minus 1 plus a2 xn minus 2. Let me stop with few terms because we just want to understand the method of moving from the difference equation to the Z transform or the system transfer function. So minus b2 yn minus 2. Let me consider a second order system, and depending on the actual order, we may have additional terms in a given discrete time system. So now let us take the Z transform of the above. So let's take the Z transform of the above. So under the assumption that x of n has a Z transform x of z, and yn has a Z transform yz. So now we then get, if I take the Z transform of the above equation, what we get is, of the difference equation, what we get is yz equal to, since I'm taking Z transform on both sides, I can have an equal to. I'm not moving, I'm moving into the Z domain for all, both the left hand side and the right hand side of the equation. So I have this as a0. What's the Z transform of x of n? X of z plus a1. What's the Z transform of x of n minus 1? By the time shift property, this becomes Z inverse x of z plus a2. The Z transform of x of n minus 2 by the time shift property becomes z power minus 2 x of z minus b1 z inverse yz minus b2 z minus 2 yz. And I can just group them together. I have all the yz terms on the left hand side. That gives me 1 plus b1 z inverse plus b2 z minus 2 yz equal to a0 plus a1 z inverse plus a2 z minus 2 x of z. And in general, we are used to representing the system transfer function h of z as the ratio of the output transform by the input transform. And hence we now have, in this particular example, we have taken a second order system, and then we have it as a0 plus a1 z inverse plus a2 z minus 2 by 1 plus b1 z minus 1 plus b2 z minus 2. So this is what we have. So this is another method of representing the given discrete time LTI system. Or I can write it as sigma I equal to 0 to m ai z to the power of minus I divided by or 1 plus j equal to 1 to n bj z to the power of minus j. So this is a generalized form of representing the obtaining the transfer function of a given discrete time system. So a0 plus a1 z power minus 1, a2 z power minus 3, etc. And this is a 1 plus b1, this is bj, etc. So this is the transfer function. So given a transfer function h of z, so the transfer function is one form of representing the system. So if I were to move to another method of representing the discrete time system, I have it as the pole zero plot. The pole zero plot is just another form of representing the system transfer function h of z on the z plane. So what we have is, let us say I have my system. I am able to represent. Okay, if I take my second order system, what I have, if I consider a second order system, my transfer function is now a0 plus a1 z inverse plus a2 z power minus 2 divided by sorry b1 z inverse plus b2 z minus 2. This sum of terms, I can factorize it and represent it as a product of terms. So say z minus z1 z minus z2, say z minus p1 z minus p2. So I need to factorize my numerator. And since in this case, if I take a second order system, I'm going to have two roots of the numerator and two poles of the denominator. So I have zeros and poles. One second. Sorry. And the moment I get these zeros and poles, I represent them on the z plane. Yes, so I have the z plane wherein my z plane consists of this is the real axis and this is the imaginary axis, and then I locate my poles and zeros. Say I have a zero at z equal to z1, so I have a zero at z1 and I have say another zero at z2. Similarly, say I have poles. Let us say I have a pole here p1 and say I have another pole p2. So this is another form of representing the discrete time LTI system using the pole zero plot. In general, we will look into the proof of this later on by taking certain examples. In general, the stability of the system can be obtained by looking into the pole zero plot. So if I need to have let me draw a unit circle on the z plane. If the poles lie within the unit circle, the system is stable. And if the poles lie outside the unit circle, the system is unstable. And hence, by looking at the pole zero plot, we can classify the system as stable or unstable. We have already seen that we can classify the system as stable or unstable from the impulse response h of n. So if the impulse response is absolute summable, then the system is stable. If the impulse response is not absolute summable, the system is unstable. And if we classify the system as stable from the impulse response, for that system, we will also find that the poles of the system lie within the unit circle. On the other hand, if my impulse response resulted in an impulse response which is not finite summable, that is the sigma of mod impulse response turns out to be infinite, we will find that for the same system, the poles are definitely outside the unit circle. Even one pole being present outside the unit circle makes the system unstable. On the other hand, the zeros can lie anywhere on the z plane. The zeros do not affect the stability of the system. So hence, if I look at my finite impulse response system, FIR systems are always stable, whereas an IIR system may be stable or unstable depending on the location of the poles on the z plane, or depending on the whether the impulse response is absolute summable or not. So moving further, we'll now go to the next form. So we have seen fourth. Let's go to the fifth method of representing the discrete time system, and that is the frequency response h of omega. Frequency response h of omega. So in general, if we are given a sequence xn and it has a frequency response x of omega, x of omega is given by definition, the frequency response of a discrete time sequence is given by sigma n equal to minus infinity to infinity x of n e to the power of minus j omega n. And if we had if I have a similar sequence, if I have the same sequence xn, and if I try to compute the Z transform x of Z, we have just now seen that by definition, the Z transform of a discrete time sequence is given by n equal to minus infinity to infinity x of n Z to the power of minus n. So let us just compare this equation 1 and equation 2. So given a discrete time sequence xn, the frequency response is given by this system. The discrete time Fourier transform is given by this equation 1, whereas the Z transform is given by this. So making a quick comparison of the two, we can immediately conclude that I can obtain the frequency response h of omega from the Z transform by replacing Z by e to the power of j omega. So if I have the Z transform, I can quickly get the frequency response of the system. This is yes. So there is that in all cases this is valid. So now if I have by using this observation, so if I have my Z transform of the system is given by say A0 plus A1 Z power minus 1. Let me consider a second order system divided by 1 plus B1 Z inverse plus B2 Z minus 2. Say this is my system. This is the Z transform of the system of a second order system. So now if I want to compute the frequency response of the system, of the same system, we have by observing we just observe the Z transform and the frequency response. I have to just replace Z by e power minus j omega. So I get e to the power of minus j omega plus a2 e to the power of minus 2j omega divided by 1 plus b1 e to the power of minus j omega plus b2 e to the power of minus 2j omega. So this becomes the frequency response of the system. So when I compute the Z transform, I can move from h of Z to h of omega by the simple transformation. So this is my frequency response of the system. And there's a very interesting observation here. We have e power minus j omega. Let us take, I take e power h of omega, say plus 2 pi. If I try to compute h of omega plus 2 pi, what will I get? I'll get this as, say my numerator is a0 plus a1 e to the power of minus j omega plus 2 pi plus a2 e to the power of minus 2j omega plus 2 pi divided by 1 plus b1 e to the power of minus j omega plus 2 pi plus b2 e to the power of minus j 2 omega plus 2 pi. And then what happens? What is we know that e power j omega is same as e power j omega plus 2 pi, because it's a cosine and a sine function, and they are all periodic with period 2 pi. So then I get back e power minus j 2 pi is same as e power omega plus 2 pi is same as e power minus j omega. Similarly, this is going to be same as e to the power of minus 2j. This is going to be minus 2j omega. And so I will get x of omega is equal to x of omega plus 2 pi for all omega. So what's the most important observation? The frequency response is periodic. The frequency response of discrete time series systems is periodic, and the period is 2 pi. Now, in general, from frequency response, we can classify the system based on its frequency characteristics. And now, since my frequency response is periodic with period 2 pi, let me sketch the interval only from minus pi to plus pi. I sketched the frequency response from minus pi to plus pi. And if my response is something like this, in the interval minus pi to plus pi, if my response is in this manner, then we say the system is a low pass filter. Because my entire frequency range of 0 to infinity is compressed and is available in the interval minus pi to plus pi. Because we just now saw that the frequency response is periodic with period 2 pi. So of interest is only the interval minus pi to pi, and the same can be by using the periodic property. We can obtain the values for other values of omega as well. On the other hand, if my response is say high or low for around 0, then my system is known as a high pass filter. Similarly, I can have a band pass filter, and in a band pass filter, my frequency response is going to be in this manner. So minus pi to pi, and say, and the magnitude, this is just a magnitude plot. It's going to be symmetric. I've just these are all the magnitude plots. Phase plot we have not sketched. So the phase plot will be depending on the of course, depending on the coefficients. If I plot the frequency response of any given system, it could be of any order, I am going to get a response, and by looking at the frequency response of the system, we can classify the system as classify the system as low pass, high pass, or a band pass system by looking at the magnitude plot. H of mod of h of omega of the filter. So this is one advantage of moving into the frequency domain is I can have an idea of the frequency component which are present in the signal, and I can also design suitable filters to remove unwanted frequency components if required. So as we saw in the sampling theorem, there is a need to often go into the frequency domain for understanding the signal, and hence this becomes another important method of representing the given discrete time system. And now we'll go to the next method of representing the system, and that is the block diagram representation. Once again, we'll consider, just for simplicity and for convenience, we will consider the second order difference equation, wherein my output yn is given by a0 x of n plus a1 x of n minus 1 plus a2 x of n minus 2 minus b1 yn minus 1 minus b2 yn minus 2. We'll take a second order system just for simplicity and for convenience, ease in understanding. And we can always extend the similar analysis to systems of higher order. So now let us look at if I want to actually implement this difference equation in hardware. If I want to have a physical realization of this system, we just saw that we just saw the sorry for that that a given difference discrete time LTI system can be represented in different methods. And these are all mathematical methods. We were able to go into the Z transform, we were able to go into the frequency response, or we were able to go into the impulse response, etc. All these are mathematical methods of representing and trying to understand the system. But in practice, in actual implementation, we are going to have it as a hardware. And if I look at attempting to implement this in a physical hardware system, what are the modules I require? We have definitely adders. So if I look, these is blocks which are required. One is going to be an adder. Then we also, of course, adder can also do a subtraction. Then we need to have multiplier because I have xn, I need to multiply it with the gain. So I need to be able to multiply with a0, a1, a2, etc. And in addition, I also need to have some delay elements. Delay elements x of n minus 1, x of n minus 2, etc. So if I give xn, and if I have a system that gives me a unit delay, I will get x of n minus 1. So if I have these blocks, if I have adders, multipliers, and delay elements, I can implement a given difference equation. And in delay, we can also view it as a storage of numbers in an array and trying to read out the right value at the right time, and they all get shifted by certain, they're all controlled by, say, a certain clock which is going to be dependent on our sampling interval TS. So all that we require is just adder, multiplier, and delay elements, and using this I can implement the difference equation. So my input to the system is going to be x of n sorry, and my output is yn. And so I have an adder, the adder a0 times xn a0 times xn, sorry, I give a delay by, I get x of n minus 1 sorry, and I multiply it by a1. I have a further delay and say I get x of n minus 2, and this I need to multiply it by a2, and I get an output. So what I have done is I've just tried to look into my difference equation. I've considered these three terms. Yn is a0 xn, a1 xn minus 1, a2 xn minus 2, and then I have sorry, to this I need to have minus b1. So I have my yn, and when I give a delay to yn, I get yn minus 1. I give one more delay to yn, and then I will get output of the block will be yn minus 2. So this yn minus 1, I need to multiply it by minus b1, and similarly yn minus 2 needs to be multiplied by minus b2. And when I add all these 5 terms, the output is going to be yn. So this is an implementation of the given difference equation. So we have just taken the difference equation, looked at the difference equation, put in adders, put in two adders, put in multipliers. These are all multipliers. I need to multiply them by the gains A0, A1, A2 minus B1, B2. And I need to have delay elements, which will give me x of n minus 1, x of n minus 2, yn. I have yn, so I get yn minus 1, yn minus 2. I add these 5 terms, then the output of the adder is going to be my output yn. In this particular form of realization is known as the direct form 1 realization. Direct form 1 realization, because it uses uses 4 delay elements to implement a second order system. We have another method of realizing the same, wherein we take this whole, since the order in which we cascade two systems does not matter. That is, if I have, in general, if I have a system with impulse response h1n, and if I have another system with impulse response h2n, and if I have input say xn and output is yn, we will see later on, we will see very soon, that even if I were to interchange the two systems, that is h2n, and I have the other system h1n, I will still get the same output. So the order in which I put the two blocks does not matter when both the systems are LTI systems, and they are represented by say an impulse response. So using this property of LTI systems, instead of having the two blocks in this manner, I will try to interchange. I will interchange this first block and the second block, and then what I get is an efficient method of realization, and that is known as the direct form 2 method of realization, or it is also known as the canonical form of realization of the system. And how does that go? I have xn, I have an adder, and my output is yn. But instead of having two blocks with delay element running in parallel, if I see, if I look at this figure, look at my direct form 1 realization. If I take this block and put it here, then what will happen? And of course I take my xn. So I'm going to have two parallel streams of delay, both doing 1-1 delay. So instead of having two parallel streams, I can merge them into a single stream. And then what I get is a single stream of delay elements. And so this is going to be my A0, A1, A2. This will have again minus B1 and minus B2. So we see here, instead of using 4 delay elements, I am just using 2 delay elements. And then I'm able to implement the same second order system. So this is an improved method of implementing the given difference equation. So this, of course, there are many other methods of implementation, physical realization, other structures. To begin with, as a starting, this is sufficient. So we have direct form 1 and direct form 2 realization of the difference equation. There are small variations. We will look into that later. So to summarize, any discrete time LTI system, a discrete time LTI system can be represented by using a difference equation, a constant coefficient difference equation given by I equal to 0 to m A0 x of n minus I minus sigma j equal to 1 to n bj y of n minus j. So this is the constant coefficient difference equation for representing any LTI system. And from this difference equation, We can get other methods of representation, that is the impulse response h of n, the pole zero plot, the frequency response h omega, the z transform, the system transfer function h of z, or the block diagram representation. And we can convert from one form to the other. All are interchangeable, all are representing the same LTI system. And from the impulse response, we can classify the system as FIR or IIR. We can also classify the system as the system being stable or unstable by looking at the impulse response, whether it's absolute summable, being stable or unstable. From the pole zero plot also, we can classify the system as stable or unstable by looking at the location of the poles. If the poles lie within the unit circle, the system is stable, else it is unstable. By looking at the frequency response of the system, which is periodic, with period 2 pi, we can classify the system as low pass, high pass, band pass, etc. by looking at the frequency characteristics of the system. And this is the transfer function h of z. And the block diagram representation is actually an equivalent hardware implementation of the given difference equation. So to recall one statement, so this is all. If I were to consider signal processing, or if I want to do any action or perform any transform using signals, all that I need to do is be able to implement this equation and uh, arrive at desired results. And why do we give the signal to a system? Because we like the output more than the given input xn. So that is why sometimes they say a signal processing person, all that he just does addition and multiplication, because that's all the signal processing. It is just implementing this difference equation in different form, maybe in hardware, and of course the number of terms is going to be high, and we need to do this addition and multiplication in an efficient method, and that gives us efficient algorithms for signal processing applications. So with this we stop today. Tomorrow what we shall do is we shall take actual difference equation with numbers and try to see the system property. So we'll just take a numerical example and try to take stable or unstable low pass or high pass filters and just have a quick review for all that we have seen today by using a suitable example. So thank you.
This conference will now be recorded.